me start this video by saying I really wanted to like this game. I tried so hard, but I couldn't bring myself to enjoy it that much. Which is why it's so disappointing for me. So this is a curious little game called Velvet Assassin. And I have a box in front of me, and what I normally do is I read off the back of the box, and what it says here is, "War is being won in the shadows." Velvet Assassin is an intense stealth action game where surreal visuals and a haunting narrative combine to produce an incredible gaming experience. Relive the brutal story of Violet Summer, a British spy deep behind the enemy lines at the heart of World War II. Slink through the shadows and take out unsuspecting enemies with a single, deathly, silent move. Through Violet's fevered dreams, experience what she experienced. Walk where she walked, and kill who she killed. Stealth assassinations. Execute over 50 different moves and deliver a quick and silent death upon your enemies. Creep through the shadows. The success of your missions depend on stealth, guile, and surprise. Unique perspective. Shift into morphine modes to slow time and gain the killing advantage. Both the publisher and developer of this game, to my knowledge, are no longer in existence, which is always a good sign when you pick up games like this on the cheap, like I did. And essentially this game is a World War II stealth action game. There are sort of sections of the game where you are basically forced to go in guns blazing, which really detracts from the experience, but I'll go on to that in a bit more detail. So, taking a look at the controls, as far as I can tell, there is no way to rebind these controls, and some of the controls are a little bit unorthodox. So, for example, you have to press the right bumper to start sneaking, which is a little bit unusual. Normally that's like the B button or click the left stick. That's a minor gripe. I'm pretty sure on PC, because this game was also released on PC, that you can rebind the controls, but I'm not entirely sure because I've not played the PC version. Sensitivity weirdly goes from 1 up to 5. Don't quite know why. And then there's the usual toggle, invert and aiming mode, stuff like that. There are subtitles which are basically needed because all the enemies in this game are Nazis, and therefore they will speak German. And of course, I'm not a speaker of German, so subtitles in that respect is is vital, of course. What really gets me is that there is no level select or stage select, so you start and you don't get a different save file either. Like, there's just new game, load game, and resume. I'm going to start a new game so that I can show you pretty much the first couple of cutscenes of the first couple of levels. But the game is supposed to be atmospheric and I suppose sort of invoke a sense of fear in you. But I never got that sort of sense of fear, to be honest, while playing this game. I mean, I respect that what they were trying to go for, but the game's production values and budget just aren't high enough to, you know, match like a sort of AAA stealth title. It's like it's in some points clear that the budget of this game isn't all that high, which is sad really, because it detracts from the overall experience. I'll just turn the game up a little bit. So of course we get this intro, and there's lots of stabbings, lots of kill moves. You will see those very same kill moves that she performs all throughout the game.
That was my true home. We were inhuman beings. Butchers on a field full of corpses. Corrupt and depraved. Only some of viscera, blood and bone. creatures without souls.
There's your title sequence. The game's loading times, now that we're on a loading screen, can vary from being anywhere between a few seconds to up to a minute, which is, of course, slightly infuriating. But on the flip side, some of the loading screens are quite interesting with some of the poses they have for her. And as you can see here, the way that the briefing for each mission is relayed through like a memory, which is basically how the story is told. But the problem is, it kind of left me not really caring for the plot all that much. And so what you have left is kind of relying on the gameplay, on things like the atmosphere, the art direction, and things like that when you have to sort of ignore the plot, really.
The main entrance was secure,
which is a shame, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you know, a game with a poor plot is bad.
I had to try and find it.
If it makes up for it in other areas.
I jumped over a wooded area that bordered on the rear of the complex. Unfortunately, my equipment was stuck at the top of a blasted tree during the landing. To make matters worse, I saw that the area was guarded by Waffen SS troops. Those units had one basic rule: take no prisoners. Exactly like me.
Yeah. And here we are. This is the gameplay. What can I say about the gameplay? Okay, what I will say is there is a little bit of motion blur, and there's no way to turn it off. Rogue Warrior has horrible motion blur, which you could turn off. The motion blur in this isn't anywhere near as bad, but it's still a little bit infuriating for me. So this is it. This is the game. This is the first level, which is almost like a tutorial. Gives you a lot of tips.
I could easily take the soldier out of the way. I only had to be careful.
So what you basically just have to do is just kind of sneak up, and then a prompt will come up, the screen will turn kind of reddish, and there's your kill prompt. And there's one of, like, say, 5 or 6 canned silent kill animations. You can pick up bodies, you can hide them, you can distract enemies by running or whistling, and you can sort of manipulate the AI to a degree. The problem is the AI isn't actually all that smart. So you could whistle to a certain location while you're hiding in the shadows, and the AI won't actually investigate properly. They'll just kind of move to the source of the noise, but they'll stop just short so that you'll be able to stay hidden, and then they'll just kind of return to their normal position.
Der ist vorn und bewacht die andere Brücke, falls überhaupt noch was peilt. Der ist schon wieder sternhagelvoll.
So I'm going to whistle here to distract this guy. And as you can see, I'm just kind of waiting in the bushes. Oh, he saw me that time. Oh, okay. And I'm dead. Yeah, you have no health in this game. So I strongly advise stealth at all times, because stuff like that can happen. And it's the inconsistencies in the AI which sometimes make this game frustrating, and they, again, like I said, it detracts from the whole experience. So I'm going to try and lure him over again. And look, see, he stops just short.
Warum schaue ich überhaupt noch nach?
And notice how the other guy just kind of walked off as well and sort of resumed his normal patrol route. Then you can just run up and stab. But yeah, hiding bodies kind of works as you'd expect. There's no way to kind of dump them off, like, off low walls or railings and things like that, which is a bit of a shame. I'm going to get spotted. Oh, I don't. I didn't get spotted there. Oh, I did. Okay. Fantastic. getting killed, aren't I? Just while I'm trying to talk about this. Yep. There we go. So it's things like this that kind of make the game more difficult to play than it needs to be. And it's disappointing because
I had to wait until they separated.
I quite like the idea of a sort of stealth game set during World War II. I think it's quite I wouldn't say niche, but there aren't that many games that are of this kind of ilk, and I can see they were certainly going for something different, but there are far too many deficiencies that make the game, you know, not as good as it wants to be, if you see what I'm saying. So there we go. Let's hide again. I'm just gonna kind of stay hidden while this guy does his normal patrol route, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of the combat. So you start by default with a knife, which is really ineffective in an open combat because you can't just press the right trigger to use it. You have to go into an aim mode by pressing the left trigger, and then you have to right trigger, and she'll kind of swipe at the enemy like that. And it usually takes about 3 knives to kill an enemy, by which time they will have pumped you full of lead and you'll be dead. I'm important, I don't know it. But anyway, you can actually find guns in this game, for example, silenced pistols, shotguns, things like that. But they'll come with like 5 or 6 bullets. And it just kind of makes going in guns blazing completely, well, it's just far more difficult to do than getting the stealthing right. If you're able to get the stealthing right, this game is a lot more fun, and it's a lot more satisfying. But if you're not very good at stealth games, this game is going to frustrate the hell out of you. I tell you now. If you find it difficult to manipulate artificial intelligence, and to kind of create distractions, you know, and remain hidden as much as possible, then you're going to find this game really difficult because the checkpoints are really far apart, and there's no way of manually saving. Excuse me. So it makes the game much more difficult than it needs to be, and you know that goes in tandem with the design choices that the developers decided to take. That's why this game's disappointing, because it's difficult for a casual player to just kind of pick up this game and enjoy it, you know, without being killed over and over again. And it's a shame, because if the game was more forgiving, then I'm fairly sure that, you know, reviewers and users alike would have found the game more enjoyable, because there would have been room for trial and error without dying over and over. And as such, that trial and error is sometimes what the game relies on, just for the stealth to be successful. Because the mechanics of the game itself, I find, are, I would say, very loose. And so what this creates is a game that is overly frustrating and overly difficult. All right, let me put it out. This game isn't that good, without being over analytical. You'll see in the bottom right hand corner I have a kind of like syringe symbol, and that's to sort of symbolize the morphine mode mechanic. So what I'm about to do, as per the tutorial, is enter what is called morphine mode. So it plays this little scene here, which I'll let you all enjoy. And here we go. I bet you weren't expecting this, were you? And what it allows you to do is it allows you to silent kill from the front during a difficult situation. So basically, if shit starts hitting the fan, the enemy starts spotting you, then you know it's like a get out of you know, killing off one, later on maybe 2 or 3 guards with your morphine. Yeah, it's a way for the player to sort of control a difficult situation they might find themselves in. Sometimes you're almost forced to use morphine though, because there's simply no other way of manipulating the guards and or manipulating their sort of control routes.
The fuel depot was certain to be in the lowest level to protect them from bombing raids. The mishap with my lost equipment would not stop me, but without explosive charges, the situation was hopeless.
So we're just going to go into the...
But the Germans were sure to have explosives stored somewhere in the bunker. Soon they would see what they were good for. A German fuel depot and an explosive charge sounded like a very promising combination. The problem was I had to be back outside before this rendezvous developed chemistry.
So here we go, mission 2.
Lockers like this often had useful things in them.
So this is what I mean by sort of getting a weapon. It's a silence pistol basically. But you only get 7 shots, and ammo is really hard to come by. And another thing is that this game is very linear. Like there's usually only 1, perhaps 2 paths that you can take. And it almost breaks the immersion sometimes when, you know, you see something that you think, oh, maybe I can interact with this, but no, it's just a piece of scenery. And it does break the immersion somewhat of the levels being very close quarters and linear. We'll sound kill him again. There we go. Oh yeah, I also mentioned this. So what you saw there was like an area transition where certain doors, you press A and it transitions you to another area. So say if I were to get spotted here by this guy. Okay, I can run through here and he will not follow me. He will be looking for, I'll look through his keyhole, he'll be looking for me on like a sort of high alert level for the next minute or so. And then eventually, once he's no longer aggroed, you can just go right back through there and the enemies will sort of almost reset to their usual routes. And this is actually a really cheap way of exploiting the AI, and again, it almost breaks the immersion. And it's a real shame because in some points of the game there are like hiding points, like sort of closets or like toilets that you can hide in to hide from the enemy. And I was wondering why they didn't put more of these in, rather than, you know, making us transition to another area, because the game doesn't like basically load everything at once. And you know, I think the game wants like the atmosphere and the immersion to be its greatest strength, but things like this kind of take away from what should be one of the game's strengths, and it tarnishes the experience as a whole. And you know, you can tell by my sort of tone of speech, but you know, I don't hate this game. I don't dislike it, I'm just thoroughly disappointed because I think it could have been so much more. Let me see if we can... Yeah, okay. What I will also say is that this game was difficult for me to play for extended periods of time. So I can normally only play about 2 or 3 levels at a time. Simply because the game took a lot out of me, really. I mean, I was doing a playthrough where I was getting all the collectibles and hidden items and so on and so forth. There's actually a really helpful video walkthrough for it. But I wouldn't play for more than like 2 hours at a time, which is unusual for me because I'm usually quite patient when it comes to playing certain video games. but this game I could only manage maybe 2 or 3 levels at a time, and some of the levels are really long, as in like half an hour, 40 minutes long, and that's without any deaths or restarts. If you throw in like repeated deaths and restarts from, you know, going through all the collectibles and getting spotted, getting killed, and so on and so forth, then this game can actually take you a while. It can probably take you about, I would say, 10 to 12 hours first playthrough. So it's not the longest game in the world, but it's also fairly short, and I didn't think there was much room for replayability, which is a real shame, because it's the linearity of this game that means it's not very replayable. The fact that the story is quite hollow and forgettable, and it just kind of makes, you know, the game almost forgettable in some aspects. It's another reason why I was, you know, so disappointed by it. And you can see how small that area was there. It was pretty much just that long dark corridor before transitioning to another area. So I have to go here.
It would have made no sense to go in there without a gas mask and explosives.
This is like the only time of the one of the few times of the game where there's like multiple objectives, and you can choose which order to do the objectives in. I thought that was cool. What I haven't touched on is there's also an upgrade system for your character, but it's really basic. As you can see, you can upgrade like morphine, so like the duration of how long it lasts, and how many doses you can carry. Stealth just improves your speed of sneaking, but I noticed such a very negligible difference in how quickly she moves when sneaking. And strength, you know, it just increases the number of hits you can take. So if you're getting spotted a lot, that's probably the most useful upgrade to invest in. But XP is not awarded for completing objectives, it's awarded for finding collectibles. And if you're not interested in finding collectibles, then you're going to be a character with absolutely no upgrades by the end of the game. And it's going to make the game obviously a lot more difficult for you, because there were some moves later on in the game where the enemies were much more difficult, like their paths would sort of overlap, and you'd have to, you know, be a bit more intelligent as to how you exploited them. And it's a shame, because, you know, I mean, it encourages the players to explore. But like I say, what if you were a casual player who just wanted to pick up and play the game? You know, it's not. This game is not suited to, you know, casual players. I just got fucking spotted there.
To increase my chances.
So I'm just going to exploit the AI and go back through here for a minute while I carry on talking about the game. Again, breaking the immersion, of course, because you'd think they would move through the door to find you, but because it's treated as a separate area, they don't. Really, really disappointing. But like I was saying, this game is not for, you know, faint-hearted people who just want to pick up and play. And I think that's why the game didn't sell very well. And also because it's quite a sort of niche setting. I think, well, not niche, but I think stealth games are an acquired taste. But obviously not for everyone. And certainly such a specific sort of setting, and kind of the way that the mechanics are done. I mean, it sets this game apart from others, and I'm all for originality, but I think the game is too sort of distant from the norm of certain stealth games, and it obviously impacted on its player base at the time. I'm gonna distract this guy actually, so I'm gonna literally hide in this corner, and he shouldn't spot me. Oh, he did? Okay. Last playthrough I did, he didn't. And my checkpoint's back here. So that is actually where I'm gonna end the video. Actually, no, it's not, because I want to talk about one last thing. If you plan on completing this game, there are cheat codes that make this immensely easier. So if you're getting really frustrated with the game but you want to complete it, there are cheat codes that you can use by unusually plugging in a USB keyboard, like an old USB keyboard that you might get with an old desktop. And if you press left shift, right shift, right shift, P and G together, you'll activate invincibility, which helps immensely because I think the checkpoints at times are unfair. Or if you just want to skip a level, you press left shift, L and then the end key. You kind of sort of hold left shift and L and then press end. And that skips the entire level. So, you know, I will demonstrate this just now. I'm going to skip this level. There we go, mission accomplished. I have a keyboard plugged into my Xbox right now because I was using cheats for agent difficulty because I didn't want to. I didn't want to envisage what the game was like on a harder difficulty than normal. Because normal was bloody hard enough. So, yeah, that's Velvet Assassin for you guys. A game that I didn't necessarily dislike, but one that I felt could have been a lot more than what it was, and one that I was, you know, really disappointed by, and that's why it's unfortunately going in the Screenster Hates series, because it is not a well-polished game. And I feel just a few more months of development time, and maybe a bit more sort of development budget could really have helped this game become so much more than what it was. And it's a sad indictment of that we don't get many of these types of games anymore, because the way the sort of games market works now, sort of AAA releases, of which you get maybe a few per year on the you know, the new sort of generation consoles, and then you get loads of indie games, a lot of which previously appeared on PC that get ported over to consoles, and others from like really small development teams, perhaps only 1 or 2 people at times, that get released for like a digital download. And it's a shame that like physical releases like this just don't really happen anymore. And it's just kind of the way that that games like this sold. It was poor, and it was unsustainable. But that was Velvet Assassin, guys. Thanks for watching, and please always, until next time, go away.